Welcome everybody, and thank you for signing in and joining us today. We are following on from James's webinar last week on stress management, and today we will talk about time management. So my name is Cara and welcome. Thank you all very much for coming. So let's just jump straight into it today. So like I said, last week James had a webinar on stress management, and today we're going to look a little bit at time management. So the two of them do follow in together. Obviously, if you want to manage your stress, it's good to be able to manage your time both inside and outside of the classroom. So that's what we're going to look at today. Again, similar to last week, we're going to change up the structure a little bit and try and keep the webinar around 45 minutes, and then have a little bit more extended time for questions and try and keep the whole thing within an hour, just so that everybody has the rest of the day free. So let's get started. And to start off for today, I'm actually going to start off a little bit differently. I'm going to start off with a question. And so I'd like to ask you guys just to have a think. Why do we need good time management? Why is this important? So have a think about this yourselves. I'm just going to scroll through, maybe pick two people to unmute themselves. And if you could give us your opinion on why we need good time management. Let me have a look here. And Elaine, please, could you give me your opinion or tell me, why do you think we need good time management? Why is this important?
Good afternoon, first of all. And just to correct, if I may, my name is Eliane and not Elaine.
Oh, thank you. I apologize.
Okay. That's all right. It looks like Elaine, but the I and the A are swapped over.
Thank you.
And in answer to you're welcome. And in answer to your question, there's a variety of reasons. I would list that time is of greater value than money. So basically, once you lose time, you can't get it back. So if it's of great value, you can't put a price on time. So it's a value.
Super, great answer. Thank you very much. And Tom, I will come to you next. What about you? Can you unmute yourself, Tom? I can't hear.
Time's very important. You don't want to be left with a big gap of time at the end of a lesson. Mm-hmm. And you certainly want to be able to teach the entire lesson before the time is up. Okay, so so you have to be able to pace it, so you're able to give us a specific amount of time for each part of the lesson, and be able to determine which parts are more important and deserve to have more time allocated to it, and vice versa.
Exactly, perfect. So to make sure that we can fit everything into the lesson, that we don't go over time or run out of time. Very good point. And then the last person I will come to then, Joanna, let's hear from you. What do you think?
Am I unmuted? Yes,
yeah,
I am.
You should be.
Yes. When planning a lesson, you've got a very finite, specific amount of time. And within that, you have to work through phases to keep your students on board and to give them an opportunity at the end to bring it all together. So if you get waylaid and held up in a particular area, then it throws you out of time. So we've got, let's say you've got an hour today. You've got to make sure you cover all that we need, but also what you have planned to meet, and that everybody goes away satisfied with an outcome that they wanted to achieve, and then to move on to the next phase of their learning.
Exactly. Perfect. So these are some really great answers that encompass the whole idea of why time management is so important. So let's have a look then at some key areas at keeping good time management. What do we need to be aware of? And similar to what James said last week about stress management, we're looking at time not only within the classroom, but how you keep time when you're planning for classes or dealing with communication with your students as well. So Obviously, arguably, one of the most important things when we're talking about time management is to be prepared, right? Preparation is key. If you're not prepared for your lesson, you can't really expect to get through all of the material, to teach to the best of your ability, and to make sure that everything will be done in time. So we need to keep an eye and to be aware and to prepare our teaching environment, whether that's in the classroom or online. When you're online, you need to make sure that you can know how to use your online platforms, whether you're teaching with somebody like a iTutor Group or Wales English, where you have your own login, or if you're doing your own classes, maybe you're using Zoom, maybe you're using Skype. So you want to get familiar with the environment that you're teaching in and with the materials that you're using as well. What materials are you using in class? Are you sourcing your own materials? Are the materials provided for you? What kind of extra materials are you going to need? These are all some things that we need to be aware of and need to think about when we're looking to have good time management. And knowing the environment, knowing what materials you need, what you're going to teach, allows you then to set your goals for that class. When we're looking at setting our goals, we need to follow the SMART acronym. They need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and done within that specific time frame. So instead of saying, right, today we are going to learn the alphabet, we need to be more specific. Today we are going to learn letter A, letter B, letter C. We will learn how to say these letters, pronounce these letters, maybe write these letters. Obviously, that's a very simple explanation for a younger class, but the same rules apply to when you're teaching older students. And it's good to have these goals in your mind, because as you're going through your teaching, it's very good to keep aware of the goals of what you want to teach, and this will allow you to move your timing back and forth throughout your lesson. It also makes it easier then for when you're planning your lessons. If you know your environment, you know what materials you have or what you need, you know what your goals are, you can make a focused lesson plan and put your timings in the corner of how long you plan to spend on each lesson as well, or each part of the lesson. When we're doing this, then we also want to make sure that we always have some extra activities planned. I think no matter how long you've been teaching for and no matter how good your time management is, there are always going to be those activities that you think this is going to take 15 minutes and it may take half an hour, 45 minutes. And vice versa, you may plan something and expect it to take up the entirety of your lesson and suddenly realize that your students have completed the whole thing within 20 minutes. This can happen a lot. And so having those extra activities planned, those backup activities, having some extra learning material, having material for students who finish things a bit faster, having material or open-ended questions that you can help expand on the material that you're learning. Have go-to activities. These are all very, very important things to help fill in at those gaps when we do have a little bit of time left over. And like I said before, then having those time frames or those little time minutes in your lesson plan allows you to keep a rough idea then of where you are. So whether you're splitting your lesson maybe into 15-minute blocks or 10-minute blocks, I can have a quick look at my clock and say, I'm 15 minutes in, I roughly should be here. And it allows you to monitor your own pace and your own timing within your lessons as well. Finally, then, we want to have a look at and be prepared and think about our students. What kind of students do we have? What level are they at? Are they younger students? Are they older students? What kind of students are they? Are they somebody who enjoys the visual aspect of learning? Are they kinesthetic learners? We have to think about what way our students best learn. Also think about what kind of teacher are you? Are you a teacher who uses a lot of visuals, a lot of videos, a lot of audios? Are you somebody who talks a lot? Understanding your style of teaching and understanding the teaching style that your student learns best from also helps you to manage between the two of these, manage the stress between the two of these, and then manage the time between the two of these, understanding the different capabilities and ability to take in and to learn. We also want to have a look then, we want to think about timing in terms of your planning time. If you have a younger class, do you really want to spend a lot of your planning time making a very difficult PowerPoint presentation with loads of bits and pieces? They're young students. Maybe this isn't time well spent on your behalf. Maybe we can have simpler games. And like what James said last week as well, you want to have timing issues with your students outside of class as well. So in your communication, not just in your planning, but are you spending a lot of time communicating with your students outside of the classroom? Is this necessary? Can you tell them, like what James said last week, oh, I have an hour free this day, or I'll get back to you in 24 hours. So all of these elements are things to think about, not just your timing within the classroom, but all of your timing preparing for your class and outside of your classroom as well. Following on then, communication. So I know James spoke a little bit about this last week, and I've just mentioned it there as well about communicating, watching your timing with the communicating with your students outside of class. So the biggest thing with communication is help. Asking for help. If you're struggling with timing, obviously we run webinars like this. There's loads of online support for any struggles that you're having within your teaching. If you're in a classroom environment, you may have a TA or a teaching assistant within your classroom. Don't be afraid to ask them for help. Also, don't be afraid to ask for support within your classroom as well. If you have a TA, maybe they can help you out doing bits and pieces. If you're in an online classroom, usually you won't have this, but communicate well with your students. Be honest with your students. And then you can ask for help after your classes. Take notes on what you think you need help with, and then communicate with others. I'm struggling with this game. I'm struggling with my timing of this issue. There are so many forums out there now for support for teachers and for online experiences especially. So ask for help. Delegation then is a big one. Be able to delegate your tasks, be able to give students parts of their independent learning that free you up a little bit. Again, if you're in a classroom situation where you have a TA, maybe you can get your teaching assistant to help you with your discipline, with your reward system. You can delegate out to parts of games to the students. Instead of cleaning up your flashcards, you can get your students to help you clean up your flashcards while you are transitioning into your next a lesson or your next activity. And the same for online teaching. You want to try and delegate. James mentioned the last week that we want to try and increase the student talk time as much as possible and decrease our teacher talk time as much as possible. So delegate as much as you can. Give them this independent learning and get them involved as much as you can. And then finally, we want to look at your rules or your discipline. When you are communicating, you want to make sure that you do it in a clear manner. We want to make sure that we're polite. We want to also think about our tone of voice. So, like I mentioned in the previous slide, we want to think about our students. What level are our students? So how will I communicate with my students? What type of English will I use? How long will my sentences be? All of these kind of things you have to think about in your timing. If you have a younger students, you might speak much more slowly and use much simpler, much shorter sentences. If you're teaching older students, this may not be the case. And then having a classroom rules already established allows your students to know what is expected of them. It allows you to have a bit of fun, to have an activity, and be able to have the control to snap it back into the lesson and be able to have a control on that timing as well. So having good discipline, having rules in your class, and being able to communicate clearly and efficiently and effectively with your students is another very important skill when we're looking at trying to keep good time management within your class. I'm just going to take a drink of water before I continue on. So one of the other things that we're going to look at is taking control. So like I've just said, when we're talking about communication, you want to have a good discipline within your class that your students know what is expected of them, and vice versa, they know what you expect of them and what the classroom situation is, that there are other students there, that we have to respect those other students and things like this, that we can have fun and play around and do different activities, but when it's time to work, it is time to work. So we are in control. We are in control of our classroom. We are in control of our lessons. So if we have taken the time to do the right preparation, to understand what we want to teach, and again, keep an eye in the back of your head, or keep a thought in the back of your head again about our main goals. What do we want to achieve in class? Take control of your class. If you feel time is moving too quickly, slow down. Speak a little bit slower. Ask more questions. With younger students, don't be afraid to repeat activities over and over. They're young, it will be fun for them, and maybe you can change it up a little bit. If you're going to repeat something, give the students more responsibility. Get them to be the teacher. So you're changing your roles, and you're also extending the timing. Then similarly, you can also speed things up. If you feel like the lesson is taking too long, then you need to remember, what are your goals? What are my aims for today's class? How am I going to get there? Right, this is taking too long. What can I move to, or what of the next activities is the most important for me and my students to reach that goal? So have that control to be able to move from one activity to another, and don't be afraid to give them the rest of an activity for homework. Sometimes I find when I'm teaching online, my lessons may have a word search included. For some younger students, these word searches can take a bit of time. So maybe we will find a couple of words, and if they are taking a little bit too much time, no problem. That's when we say, great, I hope you've had fun. Let's move on now. We don't have enough time to finish this. We can finish it at the end of class if we have time, or you can do it for homework. So if you have activities that are taking a bit too long, give them for homework, or save them for the end of the lesson if you have time, or for even for your lesson after. Having good preparation and understanding your goals allows you to tie lessons into each other as well. So you may not have just your one lesson period, you may be able to extend your learning over 2 or 3 lessons as well to fit everything into this time. Don't be afraid then to change it up. So just like we were saying, if you have an activity that you feel isn't suiting the lesson right now, it's taking too much time, I'll give this for homework. You can also, if an activity isn't working, don't be afraid to stop it. Don't be afraid to say, right, I don't think this activity is working. We aren't reaching our goals. We aren't practicing the English that we are supposed to. So let me change this activity. And this is why we said before, having extra activities planned, having extra games, having a couple of filler games is always a good idea, because this allows you to chop and change if something isn't working. Communicate with your students. Let them know, guys, I don't feel like this game is working. We're not practicing this grammar structure or this grammar sentence the way I hoped we would. I think I need to revisit this activity. Let's move on to something else. We'll try again next time. This was a lesson that I learned very early on in my teaching career. When I first started teaching in a classroom, one of the teachers I was taking over from, she had made a new board game for her students. When we got into class, the game wasn't really working. She had realized she had designed the grid a bit wrong. And so we had to put all the students back in their seats and rip up the game and basically put it in the bin. But it was a great lesson for me to learn. Not everything works out. Just like what James was saying last week about stress management, is you're human. Your students will definitely appreciate you making an effort to bring any extra material into class. So even if it doesn't work out as planned or how you expected it to go, that's absolutely fine. Communicate with them, be honest with them, and then you can work on that for the next time. Also, you may find your students may be able to have an input here. If something isn't working, ask the students what way they would like to practice. Of course, the longer you teach your students and the more you get used to them, you may have games that they regularly like to do, your go-to games that you know students definitely like and enjoy, and you can pop those in as well. You may also find that your students may ask you to do a certain activity as well during their practice. So this is a great thing as well, like we said, to delegate, to allow the student to have some form of control within the lesson as well. So this is something that is a continuous learning curve. Time management and stress management, I think, is something that all teachers struggle with, no matter how long you've been teaching. So this is something that we are always hoping to learn from and always hoping to improve. Like I said before, if you are teaching the same students and the same students over and over and continuing on a lesson plan and a lesson structure, then you get familiar with each other. And this is something else to keep in mind. We want to create a nice daily routine or a structure within our lessons. So students definitely like a repetition, like a structure. I think like a lot of people, right, we have a weekly routine or a daily routine. So a lot of the time when you're planning your lessons, maybe you will have a template for your lesson plan from your school or institution. Maybe you will make up your own templates, your own lesson plans. So like what we said before, if you're going to split your lesson plans maybe into 10 or 15-minute blocks, then that's how I would structure most of your lessons. Or if you were doing a lesson on listening, I would try and structure all of my listening lessons in a similar way. This way, students know what to expect. They know the structure of the lesson. It helps ease their anxiety, and it also gives you back some control too. The more you do something, of course, the better and better you will get at it. So having a good routine in place, a good structure in your lessons that you can build upon week after week, I think is a very good skill and a very good tool to have. We want to think about then, like I said before, transition times and demo times. If you have a new students or you're teaching a new students quite a lot, then your demonstration time or your TPR time might take a little bit longer than if you have a student who you regularly teach. They'll get used to your style, they'll get used to your activities, they'll get used to your routine. And so your classes may run a little bit smoother and fall into a nice timeline. If you have newer students or are teaching a random students, then we can struggle with timing issues a little bit more, especially if we are unsure of the student's age or the student's level. Sometimes if you're teaching with online platforms that are already up and running, like a Magic Ears or VIP Kid, something like this, they will have a level already set out for the students, but there can be quite a big gap at the students for these different levels. So an activity that took you 5 minutes with one student from a level 3 may take 7 minutes with a different student from level 3. But again, the more you practice, these skills will develop. So we want to keep in mind what kind of a TPR can I use? How long will it take me to convey this type of TPR? If you're classroom teaching and you have a teaching assistant, then you want to think about doing demonstrations of your activities. So instead of using your words to explain to the students what you're going to do, you ask your teaching assistant to join you, and the two of you practice the activity in front of the students so they can see what's going on. So all of these different elements we have to think about. And again, we're thinking about preparation, we're thinking about how we're communicating in class, and we're thinking about having control. And the whole while we're doing this, we're thinking about our goals for that class as well. What do I want to achieve before I get to the end of my period today? So then, probably one of the last things and the most obvious things when it comes to timing and time management today is, of course, having a clock visible. When I was teaching in a classroom, I remember when I moved to my second school, very few of the classrooms had an actual clock on the wall. I was shocked. I thought this was something that would just be a given, common sense. If you're teaching and you have a limited amount of time, surely you should have a clock. So make sure that you do have some form of clock visible. If you're in a classroom, preferably you'd want to have the clock on the wall which you face, but not the wall which the students can see. That way you can keep an eye on the time, but the students are facing you, and so they are focused on the lesson. Teaching online, yourself, again, you would want to have a clock maybe on your desk as well, or use your phone. I would recommend, if you are using your phone, tell your students you're using your phone for your clock, okay? I think it's just a little bit more polite. Just like now doing the webinar, if I was taking my phone up and down, wouldn't look very professional. Or then also have a clock on your desk which students can see. This way, when we said about communicating or giving them an activity to do, you can give them a time frame that they have to complete in that activity, and you can show them how much time that they have left as well. Again, we're talking about control and having control over your time, over your activities, and the transition between your activities as well. For some online teaching, you may have a timer built into the actual platform that you're using as well. So of course, this is very handy because you can keep an eye on that time, on that clock as you're teaching. And then, like I said before, having a rough idea of how long each section of your lesson plan is going to take allows you to just watch that clock so that you can have some idea of whereabouts you should be in your lesson. So we are almost at time for Q&A now, but I just want to have a quick recap on some of the key tools that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking and talking about time management for learning. We want to be organized. We want to organize our environment, organize our material, organize our goals. We want to prioritize our goals. What do we want to learn by the end of this class? We want to have a structure. We want to have a flexibility as well. So I know these sound a little bit strange beside each other, but we want to have this structure so that we ourselves and our students have a rough idea of what's expected for the lesson. And we want to have flexibility because students are ever evolving, and so is our teaching, and not everything goes to plan. So we want to be able to have that flexibility to chop and change activities that aren't working, to be able to fill in games when we have some spare time, to speed things up and move some activities around if we don't have a lot of time. So being prepared and will help you to have this level of flexibility. And then we want to be able to delegate and take control. You are your teacher. You are in the control of your lesson. And so just remember that. And like James was saying last week, be honest with your students. You're only human, right? Everybody is. And so as long as you keep that level of a open and honest communication with your students, then they will appreciate that. And you can work on these timing issues together. And then the most important thing, like I said before, have a backup. Have a backup activities. You can have your backup activities like your warmers or fillers, like your warming or your closing activities that may not be related to the actual task at hand or to the topic that you're doing. They're just an activity to fill some time to keep the students engaged. And then have extra activities or extra exercises specific to your learning then as well. And for these kind of things, don't get too stressed out about it. Remember, we can use old childhood games for fun activities, and a lot of the classroom activities we can move into the online environment as well. Like what James said last week, there are so many online resources that we can use. So we need to take really good advantage of these when we're teaching online. So I think now we can move on to a bit of a Q&A if anybody has any questions or any further points that they would like to include on our webinar today and on our topic today as well.
Okay, hi everybody, James here. How's everybody doing?
Good afternoon, James.
What we're gonna do is, there you go, she has it.
I got it.
Very good, Kara. I just wanted to say hello to everybody, and Kara, congratulations, another excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it, and we're open for questions now for Kara. Not everybody at the same time, please.
Okay. May I ask a question?
Of course, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about the time management and how to manage the time during the lesson. But what happens if you go over the time? Say the lesson is scheduled for 40 minutes. Are you allowed to go into, say, 45 minutes or more?
So that will depend on, of course, you, the platform that you're using, and your students. So if you are teaching with a platform, for example, like iTutor or Wales English or VIP Kids, something like this, where they have a set times, so their lessons could be at 25 minutes or 45 minutes, then you would want to keep within that time frame, especially if you have a class afterwards. You have to remember that if you go over your 25-minute class in your first class and you have a class afterwards, that class is going to start later. And so you have a knock-on domino effect, just like going to the doctor's office. If the first patient takes 10 minutes over time, the rest of his appointments are going to be delayed. So this will depend on the platform that you're using and depend on your students. Sometimes your students won't mind going a couple of minutes over if you really need to finish the lesson. That's absolutely fine. Ask them, or again, apologize. Guys, I'm sorry. I know I went a bit over time today, but I just want to get this finished. Thank you for your patience. So again, having communication and clear communication with them is very important. And like I said before, if you are coming close to the end of the lesson and you feel like there is some material that you can give out for homework to help you finish in that time as well, then do so, or adjust your exercises, or give some independent learning. Delegate out to make the activities go a little bit quicker and try and finish within that time frame. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much for that question. But I just want to add on to that. Tell me, is there a penalty that they would apply if they find that you are not keeping within the limit of your
So it depends.
time?
If you teach with an online platform, so for example, I have experience with iTutor, so I will just use them as an example from my personal experience. You have to join the next class 3 minutes before. So again, this is what we're talking about, being prepared. So when you're signing in, just like with the Zoom, we would all sign in 10 minutes before so that we can get ourselves prepared and make sure everything is okay. And so you want to do the same thing with your online teaching. So with the iTutor group, you have to sign into your video lesson 3 minutes before. So if I have 3 25 minutes back to back, 25-minute class, 25-minute class, 25-minute class, and I go over in my first class and I don't sign into my next class before 3 minutes, that class is taken away from me and given to a different teacher. So yes, there will be penalties for that. So if you're teaching with an online thing like iTutor group, you want to keep within your 25 minutes. 26 minutes, okay, but you want to make sure that you sign into your next video with the 3 minutes to go. So again, this is we're talking about keeping an eye on the clock as you're teaching. You know what's in your lesson plan and you know what your goals are. So if I know I still have 5 slides left, but I only have a few minutes, what out of those next 5 slides are the most important thing for my student to know so they can reach their goals? And that's what I will focus on in my couple of minutes of class, and then ask them to go back and review everything that I didn't get done when they are finished. But yes, with some companies, you will be punished or have classes taken away from you if you don't make them in time. And then if you lose a certain amount of classes per month, then you may have a monetary penalty as well, where they will take some fees off you for being late or for not being able to keep up with your contract of teaching a certain amount of hours.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks very much.
No problem. Any other questions today? Wow, no questions at all?
Elaine wants to ask a question. Hi, Elaine. Go on.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. We've talked from the point of view of the teacher's side, where we can hold penalties, the errors could be on ours through time management. However, let's look at it on the other side. No technology is foolproof. There's an issue with an IT issue,
yeah.
Which is beyond your control as a teacher. What happens in that instance where the role is reversed with regards to
It
issues?
happens all the time. And
Right.
that's what we're saying about being flexible and being as prepared as possible is obviously a big help. But like you said, technology isn't perfect and it can be totally out of your control. And this is definitely something that you do need to think about. You could plan everything to a T and your student is 5, 6, 7 minutes late. If you have a 25-minute class and your student is 7 minutes late to class, that's a huge chunk of your lesson missing. So again, this is where we're talking about preparation, planning, previewing, what's in my lesson, what are the key points, what do they have to learn? I only have 15 minutes. With your online teaching, for example, with the iTutor group, you will also have a PMIT or an IT service, a help desk. So you can write to them and they will say, oh, excuse me, my student hasn't arrived. Please, can you check for me where they are? Yes, no problem, Cara. We are checking with your student. Please stay in class. And if this is something that's out of both of your control, do your best. Explain to your student, like we said before, okay, today you were a little bit late in class, so we're not going to be able to get through everything. If there's certain things within your lesson that you can give them for homework, do so. Look at your main points. Look at what you think might be most difficult for them. Again, if you know your students and they're regular students, this becomes much easier because you will have an idea of what level they're at, what their struggles are, what they might be okay with. If you're teaching random students, it becomes a little bit more difficult, but again, with practice, you can get better. If it's a technical issue from either side, either your computer side or your student's computer side, if it's a proven technical issue or if your student doesn't come into the class, then you don't receive a punishment or anything like that. If your student doesn't make it into class, then it's out of your control. If you were late to class, that is an issue that you have and that you need to be in control of and that you have to take responsibility for. If you're having a tech problem, then you can write to your help desk afterwards and just explain, excuse me, I am sorry, I had an issue with my laptop, this, and this happened. And again, I think you get maybe one warning or you can use this a couple of times if it's every now and then. If you're having a tech issues 3-4 times a week, then I think this sends a big red flag. But yes, very, very good question. Technology is not always reliable. Yes, it can be absolutely great, but there are elements that we need to think of. So we could have sound issues. We can have issues with the students being able to go in and out, having a poor connection. So all of these things you do have to think about with online teaching, and they may incur and delay your timing of your classes a little bit. Again, control over this will come with time and with the practice.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
Okay, Chrissy, I was about to ask Chrissy actually, because I was wondering, and I'm pretty sure Stephanie is going to have something to say as well as Melanie. Hi, Melanie. So let's go with Chrissy, please.
Hi, James. It's not so much a question, but an observation. The point about if you're halfway through an activity and you're going to run out of time, you tell the students, well, there you go, I've showed you how to do the first 2 or 3 things. Now it's up to you to do things 4, 5, and 6 for your homework, right? That buys you time on the day, but it also has a knock-on effect because you're going to have to allow 5 minutes in your next lesson to say, this is the task I left you last week. This is what you should have had for points 4, 5, and 6. So even buying yourself time from week to week is going to have a knock-on effect, which is why time management is so critically important. But on the other hand, it looks to the students as though you've actually planned that. So that's actually quite a good thing. Excuse me. Where I teach, I'm part online at the moment and part classroom based. And the time management, the classrooms are all very, very strictly organised. especially as we can only have now in half the amount of students that we would normally have. And the classrooms are half filled due to social distancing and COVID regulations. If my class is scheduled to 10, I have to be out of there at 9:59 because someone will be coming in at 10 to use the classroom after me. The time is that tight. So time management is a skill for teachers that simply cannot be emphasized enough. And a lot of it does literally come just through experience, and you get to know how long a thing will take. But unfortunately, it does take you a wee while to get to that happy position.
Yeah, definitely. You made some super points there, 100%. If you are going to cut something short in your first lesson, if it's something like a game or an activity, you can cut that short. If a game is taking too long, don't mind to cut that short. But 100%, if you have an exercise that you've cut short and that you have given for homework, you do have to allow yourself for the next lesson to include that a bit. And that's what we were saying earlier about thinking about your environment and thinking about your goals. Are those goals that you can stretch over 1, 2, or 3 periods of class rather than just one? And something else you mentioned there as well about your environment is it your classroom? Okay, online is one thing, I may be sitting at a desk here, but if I'm a classroom teacher, exactly that. Do I have to be out at 9:59? Is there another class coming in? How long does it take me to get from this classroom to the next classroom? Do I have to go back to the office to get more materials for my next class? So 100%, there are so many factors to think about when we're teaching and teaching online and teaching in the classroom. And like you said, that time management is a skill that definitely is critical for teachers and something that we can always improve on and always get better at. Thank you so much for some of your great points. I think, James, you said somebody else for a question.
Hi, it's Stephanie speaking.
Hi.
There we go. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was really very interesting. Learned a lot through it as well. I think just something that I'm aware of when I do time management training, to always try and plan in a bit of time for any crisis that can come along. But now in teaching, and especially if you do teach online, your time is so limited. But I think I don't know, how do you deal with that then? Because it's all fine and well to always give you a 5 or 10 minutes in between for any crisis management that can happen or come in between that is unexpected. But with teaching, it must be quite difficult to try and get that set in.
Yeah,
there's so much that you have to cover in a short period of time.
Definitely. And this is like what we were saying before in terms of nobody's a perfect, everybody's a human. And you are always going to have lessons that are a total disaster. Trust me, that's going to happen. We are all human. And, you could, like I said before, I've done it before where I've spent so much effort into making a game for my kids and planning something for my students and thinking, oh, great, I have the whole lesson planned. We're going to do this. And it was an absolute disaster. So this happens. Sometimes you can't prepare for everything. This kind of ability to adapt and to be flexible comes from experience as a teacher, comes from being prepared. Maybe you have a list of activities down the side, a list of materials that you can use to help explain or to help navigate the crisis that you're in. So I don't know if I have any set way to deal with this. I think it's a super question. I think, like I said, it's just something that will come with experience, with practice, and the realization of it happens, you know, it happens. Not every lesson is going to be the best, greatest lesson that you can give. But at the end of the day, you tried your best. Did your students have fun? Did they learn something? That's the biggest thing, you know. Nobody's going to be perfect. Everybody has off days. Everybody has those lessons where you just come out and think, I should have stayed in bed this morning. Those things happen. And just to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and to try again and go for it the next time. And again, communicate with your students. They're only human too. So talk to them and apologize and put your hands up and say, my bad, this did not go as I had planned, as I had hoped. And if you have students who you are building a relationship with, who are regular students, sometimes they may be able to help you in these kind of crises as well.
Yeah.
And you kind of delegate between the different students. So great, you guys go off and do this activity. I'm going to deal with this over here for a minute. So just to trust your instincts, and just to trust the skills that you learn in everyday life too, and they can transfer into this. And also, if you're classroom teaching, remember that you have the support of a teaching assistant as well. They're there to help sure that everything in the classroom goes smoothly and that the students receive the best level of teaching that they can. So it's all about teamwork.
And control, like you said.
And control.
And staying in control. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So trust yourself, trust your abilities, trust in your preparation. Like I said, have those few extra games that if something is just a total disaster, okay, this isn't working, let's try this. And then even you can just throw in a warmer game to reset. If something isn't working, it doesn't mean you have to jump straight into the next activity, especially with younger kids. If something isn't working, then change them out, get them to stand up, sit down, shake their arms, touch their nose, sit down. Okay, let's go into something else. So have that break their train of cycle, distract them for a bit, and then bring them back to the lesson and move on to the next area that you're going to teach.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Melanie today. I haven't heard from Ethan. I haven't heard from Kevin. Come on, guys. Why you're so shy? I mean, Kara is not going to bite you.
No.
No. All right. Who would like to jump in there? Melanie, do you have anything you would like to add? No. What about Victor? Anything? No question. Ethan.
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
Hey, Ethan. Oh, okay. Kumaraswamy, is that correct?
Yes, please.
All right, go on.
Good evening to all.
Hi, good evening.
Sometimes some students are disturbing the class online also. How can we handle them and how can we manage the time?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Having good discipline or having bad discipline can really affect your class, definitely. If you're in a classroom, remember, like I said, you have a TA, a support teacher who will be able to help you with these discipline issues and also with the rewards. So for some teachers, maybe we use stars, you might use cupcakes. And this really works giving a positive praise for positive things, not necessarily giving negative praise for negative things. But if you focus on the positives, I think a lot of students begin to see, wow, he's getting good and he's doing this. So this can definitely help. Yes, you can lose a lot of timing issues to do with the students. Also, if you're teaching online, don't be afraid to leave notes in their report. If you are having big issues with the students being very distractful or disrespectful in the class, then leave a note after class on his report and to just say maybe he needs some parental control or parental supervision while doing his online lessons, just to make sure that he is paying attention and isn't being too distractive. Again, another thing might be maybe the activities aren't exactly connecting with the student. Like we said before, there are different types of students, just like we all have different types of teaching styles. So maybe the activities or maybe the way in which the class is being conducted isn't the right way for the student to take in the most information. So try a few different activities, try changing things up, and see if you can engage the students this way. So there's a combination of different things that we can do. Add in different activities, try different variations of the activities that you have, and leave notes, speak to the parents and speak to the other staff as well to help you with these issues. I hope that this helps.
Yeah, let me jump in there. And
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Sharing these ideas.
Let me try to complement a little bit what Kara said. We've made a very strong emphasis throughout, all these webinar series that even though we tackle all these topics, individually, they're all tied in together. And that's what you need to take into consideration. Now, Kara said something very fundamental, very important, and I just feel like I need to expand on it. And that's keeping students engaged and keeping students interested in the subject matter. It's something that we've spoken about before, about making, the subject matter relatable to students, relevant to students. And once you manage that type of environment in which students are connected, right? Not only to you, but to the subject matter itself, and you make sure that the class is student-centered, not teacher-centered, then this is going to minimize the instances of distractions or problems that you may have with classroom management. Kumara Swami, sorry if I didn't pronounce that correct. Another suggestion that I would give you is check out our webinar on classroom management. It's on, for those of you that do not know how to access these webinars, just go to YouTube. Then simply on YouTube, type in on the search bar, Global TEFL, like it sounds, Global, TEFL. Click on it and you'll find our channel. You'll find our logo, okay, Global Language Training. And then when you go in there, you're going to find all of these webinars. And there's one on classroom management that'll help you, get an idea of a lot of activities and how to deal, with different situations with different ages. Okay. And again, I mean, it's all a matter of engaging the students. And Kara couldn't have said it better. Engaging the students, making the class fun. I mean, especially if you're working with younger students. We need to move away from this, traditional classroom environment paradigm, both online and face-to-face, okay? Thank you, Kara. Carry on. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. So like what you said there, and even if you have activities that say that you are used to, that you like, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of hangman. I think most people know how to play hangman, and you draw the little man and the stick man, but there are so many variations that you can do of this game. One of my students' favorites was a feed the shark. So very similar to hangman, you have the lines across the board with you have to fill in the letters. And in the very top corner, I draw a desert island. And swimming around the desert island, I draw a huge big shark's mouth. And there again is the same number of lines as the words that you have, one to the desert island and one to the shark's mouth. And every time the student gets a wrong letter, instead of drawing your hangman, you are drawing a part of the person getting closer and closer and closer to the shark's mouth. If they get the letter right, the student ends up on the beach. If they get the whole word wrong, the student ends up eaten by the shark. Very, very simple variations of the same game, which can help your students. Again, it keeps the structure, so it's all the same game, but there's 3 different ways of playing this game, and that can add excitement and can help you to attract the attention of your different students.
Okay, Melanie, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Oh.
Sorry. We'll go with Melanie, and then we'll go with, I don't know who it was. I was going to speak.
Steph, but it's okay. Thanks.
No, go ahead, Steph. Go ahead, Steph. Let's go with Melanie, and then we'll go with Steph.
Sorry, Melanie, just all I wanted to add to what Karen also said and what James was speaking about it, I think to try and keep the class, obviously there's a whole webinar on this, and I think I haven't seen that one yet, but I think it's pretty important to know your students and how their learning techniques are. Like you mentioned in the webinar today, I think especially to try and keep them focused and keep them interested, to try and swap and change between different activities and things to try and keep them all engaged. Is that right, what I'm saying? Sorry.
No, definitely. Like you said, there are different types of learners, and you know, not every child is going to be really interested in running around and games. Some children do like quiet learning. So 100% understanding your students, understanding what works for them, and like I said, understanding what type of teacher you are too, because sometimes you may need to change your teaching style or to adapt your teaching style. So having a look at your lesson plan and at your goals, you may think, hey, I quite often use this form of teaching. I quite often use this activity with the students. It's not working. Maybe I need to change. Maybe I need to adapt. So 100%, it's about understanding your student and understanding yourself as a teacher as well. Definitely.
Thank you, Steph. And Melanie. Mel, you need to unmute your microphone.
I appreciate all of this. It's really wonderful. And my question has at least two parts. The first is, how different is it to do a student, the differences between a classroom and online? In terms of student-centered stuff, in terms of cultural differences, I explored VIP Kids for a while. I didn't do it. I heard of some really difficult situations where kids did not want to be in front of the computer. In at least one terrible situation where, kid didn't want to be in front of the computer. One of them, the parents were supplying the answers. One where kid was getting smacked by the parent. And then on top of all that, the people who were dealing with, the teachers who were dealing with that had to deal with VIP Kid too. I don't know what happened.
Definitely, when you're teaching with a platform, you can encounter all of these different problems. So you can have, and also sometimes the student have control of their own video and of their own microphone as well. So not only do students not want to be in front of the computer, the students will turn off their own video, so you actually can't see them at all. So this is where you have to use your own common sense. You have to listen. Is the student typing away on his computer whilst we're having class? Is the TV going whilst he's having class? I've had it before. I've had students go to the toilet midway through my class. I can see them standing, going to the toilet, and I'm teaching. Sometimes you just have to, just deal with it, just move on. Like you said, there are a lot of different cultural elements when you teach to students across the world. So you have to try and be a little bit flexible with this. Like I said before, also remember with these online platforms, a lot of the time you will have a report to fill in at the end of the class. So you can fill in what you did that day, how your students' behavior was, how your student hit the learning targets for the day, and then you will have an extra support box. And these notes can be specifically for the company that you're working for and not to the student. And this is where you can write the student wasn't paying good attention, or the parents were quite involved in the class. You can also say, oh, the student wasn't too well behaved, or something like this. There was an issue with the student and parent online. Please talk to them. So there should be all kinds of forms with the communication here that you should be able to deal with. So definitely when you're online, there are all of these things to think about. Students muting and unmuting their own microphone, students muting and unmuting their own picture, not being able to see them. And again, then you have to think about, well, what can I do to attract this student's attention? If your student is doing something and he's busy during the class, maybe again, maybe, you know, it's a question of the teaching style is not being received by the type of a learner. So if you are having issues like this in the classroom, change it up, see what you can do to grab that student's attention. And it's the same if you have a parent. I quite often have a parents who sit just in the side of the class or behind, especially with the younger students, and to include the parents. If the parents are telling the student the answer, wow, great job, mom, thanks. Mom speaks good English, right? Wow. Can you copy mom? So don't worry about it. Students get involved or parents get involved all the time, especially Asian parents are very heavily involved with their students. So if that's the case, then just get them to join in too. Take mom as an extra student in your classroom and then say, great, mom, okay, let's have your turn now. Oh, great. So you can practice this with mom after class, and rope mom in. If mom wants or mom or dad want to take part in the lesson, no problem. Mom and dad can help that child study every day and do homework with them too. So to try and look at all of the positive sides of these things too, being flexible, being adapt. What can I change about this lesson to help it go better? So yes, the students may have issues and students may not want to be in class, but there is a level of control that we can have over that.
Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
Mel, you said that you had 2 questions.
Oh, that was, well, it was one question, many parts.
Hey.
No, it's definitely a good question because like you said, it's difficult when you have students in a classroom. You can see who's paying attention. You can see who's staring up at the stars and see who's not doing their work. So definitely with online teaching, that is a big factor, keeping them control. And if they have their microphone or their video switched off and you can't see them, then use all of your other senses. How long is it taking your student to respond? If you're asking them a question, what are they responding? Yes, yes, yes. I asked you, how are you? You said yes. Okay, the student either didn't understand you or the student isn't listening. So use all of your other senses, listening to what's going on. How long is the student taking to answer you? Is your question too difficult or is the student just not paying attention? So use all of your other skills to listen to what's going on and then leave notes as well at the end of the day, at the end of the class. Jennifer, do you have a question?
I did, yeah, actually. You were talking about discipline earlier. How would you do that in an online setting? Like in a classroom, you can kind of talk one-on-one with a student if it gets really bad. How do you do that in an online setting?
It's definitely much more difficult with an online setting. So remember, with younger kids, you usually with an online should have some kind of reward system as well. So you can just do little things with the rewards. Reward the good students, reward all the good behavior, not necessarily ignore the bad behavior, but by praising all the good behavior, by constantly giving positive feedback to the good students, it might help draw the attention in of the other students. As a teacher, you will also have a mic control button as well, depending on what platform you use. So you may be able to control the student's microphone, his or himself. And so if they are speaking out of turn or something like this, just say, okay, I'm going to turn your microphone off now and let so-and-so speak. So a lot of the skills that you learn in the classroom are definitely transferable. Again, it's about having control. It's about having confidence and about how you portray and speak to your students also. So tone of voice is very important. I think you can tell a lot from tone of voice and how you say something. And so your students should be able to to grasp with a combination of all of these things to help with the discipline. And then, like we said, worst comes to worst, leave some notes in your report so that the issue is highlighted with the company that you're working for, and also maybe highlighted to the parents. And then hopefully over time, between all three of you and the student, things should be able to get better. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Sorry, I didn't realize I was still muted.
No, that's fine. Anybody else?
Yeah, we got Melanie, and we have.
No, I don't have any more.
Sorry, yes, I saw you raise your hand, and we have
Eliane.
Eliane, yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay, James. It's Eliane, yes.
Eliane,
Just
okay.
a quick question riding off the back of the answer that's just been given. I've not worked on a platform from a company as of yet. What I'm trying to discern, we've kindly covered the subject of rules within the control aspect and time management. Now, rules can be enforced and communicated to a classroom in person.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working on a platform for a company, are we saying here that rules aren't applied or introduced in a classroom for a company?
So, I mean, for me as a classroom teacher, when I was starting off my lessons with the younger students, I would draw the rules on the top of the board. So like I would draw a pair of eyes to be like, right, we're going to look at the teacher. I would draw some ears. I would draw a hand. So in your online classrooms, you may not necessarily have your own classroom rules in each lesson. You yourself, if you're teaching on a platform, will have a training. There's lots of training to do on the different platforms. And then you will also have your own profile. So you can set up in your teacher profile what you expect of your students, how you run your class as well. Because in a lot of online profiles like this, or a lot of online platforms, the students can also pick you as a teacher. So you can tell them about you, about your teaching style, about what you expect, about how you run your classes. And so when the students choose you as a teacher, they will have some form of idea. If you have your students and they're your set students over time, then of course you can enforce your own rules, your own discipline, your own expectations of what you have of them. If you have a random students, different students every day, every week, then this is a little bit more difficult. On the whole, students are students, so they're going to understand the classroom rules. They're going to understand to be respectful. They're going to understand to try and wait their turn, to answer in full sentences, all of these kind of things. You know, they're students, they go to a normal school. So all of these things, they should already be instilled in them. But if you have any issues that you're not happy with in your classroom, then just to mention them in the class so that the student is aware of them. It's not a free-for-all, definitely not. I'm sure different platforms also will have different ways of doing things as well. So maybe some platforms will have a strict set of rules, of guidelines. And the students then themselves also have their student login portal. So that's where they will be able to keep track of all of their feedback and stuff. So they may have some form of rules as a student of what's expected with them on that side. But as a teacher, I only see my profile. So I haven't seen my student's profile online. So that I'm not too sure about.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
No problem.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yes, I can't really read your name.
Me neither. I'm going to unmute you and ask.
We're going to have to ask you, how do you pronounce your name?
Am I on mute?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, hello. My name is Bibi. I'm from Russia.
Vivian? Okay.
Yeah, Bibi. Bibi.
Bibi. Okay. Bibi.
Yeah. Here's the question. I'm not sure if it was mentioned already. I'm sorry if it was, but what happens when you run out of all your activities planned and there is some extra time left?
So great question. So you should always have in your preparation plan for some extra materials, extra activities. So first you want to have some extra planning or extra activities just in case some of the stronger students have finished the activity before the rest of the students, have some activity that they can expand on so that they can develop on. Then also you may have your go-to games. A lot of teachers have a go-to games, especially if you have your regular students. So these are games that you regularly go to, that you're filling, your students love, you know your students love them. You have an extra couple of minutes. What you guys want to do? Oh, I want to play this game. So you can ask your students, we have a 5 minutes. What game would you like to play? What things would you like to revise? You can have your extra activities already planned. And then also for me as a teacher, I quite often keep a list of games and activities visually. So either stuck on the wall or on behind my desk. In my classroom, I had big posters across the classroom. And this means if I did have an extra few minutes spare, I could take a quick glance over at the wall, see all of these activities and go, oh, that one, I'll do that right now, and be able to tie that into the lesson that we're doing. So having a good understanding and good preparation of what you want to do, have some extra activities planned just in case, have your go-to games that you know most students love that can be adapted for different levels, and then have a visual list somewhere as well of activities that you can use to quickly fill in the time. And if you have a couple of minutes spare at the end, remember, just like with your warm-ups, they don't always have to relate back to the lesson. Sometimes it's nice to finish with something a little bit more fresh, a little bit fun, just to say, great guys, well done. We have worked really hard. Let's just do something for 5 minutes that isn't related to the class. So very, very good question. I hope this helps. No problem.
Okie dokie. Anybody else? Going once?
Going twice.
Going twice. Sold. All right, Kara, I guess you can wrap it up now.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you everybody for coming. We had some super questions and some really great input and feedback from everybody as well. Like we said, these kind of skills are not perfect, and it's always something that we need to develop and always something that we need to work on. And of course, we have this great community to ask and to support each other as well. So just always remember that whatever you're feeling or whatever you're experiencing, somebody has already been through it before. So just ask for help. And I hope everybody enjoyed. Thank you so much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. It was fantastic. Thanks very much.
Great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
James, I think maybe we are doing a joint one for the next one. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's correct. We are going to be doing the dynamic duo.
Yeah.
I'll be sidekicking with Kara.
Yeah.
Kara will lead, and then I'll throw in some extra, resources. We're going to do one on TPR.
Yeah.
So the idea is that Kara is going to show some very cool, hands-on activities. And as always, I'll throw in there some resources and some web pages and whatnot. So we hope to see you all next week. Stay safe, as always. Great having you. And Kara, congratulations. Awesome
Thank you.
Very nice.
You. Thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, like you said, see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Kara.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.